I invite you to now close your eyes as we move into our time of meditation together today. Just allowing your body to relax and, again, just letting the breath flow naturally. I invite you to now just begin to place your focus on your crown chakra, just envisioning your crown chakra opening. Opening and becoming receptive. Visualizing this white light shining into your crown chakra and just really igniting it and just really making it come alive. Really beginning to ignite and to turn on that imagination that each one of us has. Now I ask you to begin to use your imagination to envision a world that you want to see. Your perfect world. Maybe it's more prosperity, more love, peace, whatever it is that is your perfect world. Allow yourself to feel how you feel when you're in this perfect world. Maybe you feel joy, so much joy that you just can't stop jumping up and down and screaming with delight. Or maybe you just find yourself just embraced in the arms of just pure love. Just allow yourself to truly feel that feeling. Who is standing by your side in this perfect world? Where are you standing? What colors are around you that are shining the most vibrantly? What are your senses telling you? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you hear? So in a moment, we're going to enter into a period of silence. And I invite you, as we're in that silence, to really just allow yourself, just immerse yourself into your perfect world, making it come alive for you. As we enter into our moment together of silence. And as you begin to bring your awareness back to this room, I invite you to bring that vision back with you, to hold that vision in your imagination. We don't have to be in meditation to do that. Hold that vision during your conscious hours. Hold that feeling during your conscious hours. Allow your 5 senses to hold that feeling and that vision as well. Because it is through that imagination where we are in tune with our higher self, where we are most aligned with that which is our higher self, with that which is God. Hold it, see it, feel it, and allow yourself to know it. Let's just breathe into this moment and always know that all is well. Namaste. We're going to hold that vision as we go into something that we're all familiar with, which is all right. Has everybody been paying attention to your imagination a little bit more lately and really kind of not writing it off as something kind of airy-fairy or kind of silly? Have you really been kind of paying attention to your imagination and really thinking about what it is that it's saying? You know, really thinking that it's a message from your higher self. Has everybody been kind of thinking a little bit more about that lately as we've been talking a little bit more about, some of Wayne Dyer's teachings? I know it's kind of made me pay a little bit more attention to that, We write sometimes we just write our imagination off as like, it's just my imagination. It's just a little airy-fairy. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we think of some crazy little things in our imagination, but lots of times, what is it that it's really trying to say to us? What's it trying to tell us? It's important that we learn to pay attention to that and really pause to think about it. So I'm going to start with a question today, and that question is, have you ever created something in which you first envisioned the end result? Think about it, a piece of art, maybe a piece of music. Maybe you fixed a car and you envisioned the end result of the car. You restored the body of it, and you're like, man, this car's going to look really good. I see what it's going to look like when it's done. Knitted a scarf or a prayer shawl. We saw the end result of it first. You likely saw the end result before you started working on it, and then you picked up your tools and you begin to work. It's almost like you're kind of working your way backwards in a way. You already saw the end result in your mind, so you set about creating what it was that you saw as that end result. Now I ask you to take that and think about it in a much, much larger, a much grander way. What if you've already seen the end result of everything that's going on out there right now? What if you've already seen the end result of COVID? Or perhaps of politicians that you no longer want to see in office? I'm not naming any names. It could be either anyone. I mean, seriously, it could be anybody. But, imagine the end result of that. Or the end of racism. The end of misogyny. What if on a spiritual level you've already seen how all of these things end? You've already seen that end result. What if prior to entering this incarnation, you pointed and you said, that's it. That is when and where I want to be. Because you already saw the end result to everything that's going on out there, and you saw that it was good. It's kind of deep, huh? A little deep on a Sunday morning, especially because I haven't even had lunch yet. So, I had a shake for breakfast, so it's a little deep getting going on just that shake. But, I've joked about, the year 2020 up here, and I know we've all joked about it. We've all kind of talked about, oh my gosh, I wish this was over. 2020, let's knock it off this calendar. Let's just forget it ever happened. But on a human level, Of course we think about those things, where we want to get past all that. We're like, "Phew, time to move on, get past all this, having to wear masks out in public and all that, give each other hugs, all of that kind of stuff." And there's nothing more that I would personally like for it to be over with on a human level. But on a spiritual level, I know we are exactly when and where we are supposed to be. And I know that at some point I saw the end result on a spiritual level, and I said, that time right there is where I want to spend my incarnation. Now, the things we're going to talk about today can also be applicable with anything in our lives, not just getting past COVID necessarily, but can be applicable to everything in our lives. They don't have to be applicable to just moving through current events outside. Remember that you can use these tools to manifest those things in your life that you feel is perfect for you. So one of the things I've talked about over the past couple of weeks is our imagination. And we sometimes just write it off as having these silly daydreams or having our head in the clouds. Now, I remember reading and studying the Bible as a kid, learning all these verses and stuff in Sunday school, traditional Sunday school. And I'd get jealous sometimes because I would read stories about how people have these conversations with God, this God being from the Bible. And this God being of the Bible would talk back to them. I mean, they'd be sitting there having conversation like we are. And I was like, well, how easy it must have been for those people. They knew exactly what they were supposed to do and when. It'd be like, hey, God, can you tell me what I'm supposed to do here? God would be like, oh, yeah, just go out and, buy you this or do that. That's what you need to do. But I'd read about it and think, man, it would be so much easier if God just did that now. If there's this being called God and it just comes down and answers my questions in conversation. But then later on, we read in the Bible how God just goes completely silent. I mean, it is radio silent. Those people are just like we are now. They're like, what happened? It became not quite as easy. But is God really radio silent? So as I begin to grow older, I begin to learn about God in a different way, different than what I had learned in traditional Sunday school. About how I'm really a part of this God rather than this source being a being outside of myself that actually comes down and speaks in English or whatever language that we speak. So is God really silent? How can something that is a part of me ever truly be really silent? How can something that lives within me as a part of this spirit within that inhabits this body ever truly be silent? It's not. And one of the ways it chooses to communicate is one of the most beautiful ways possible, and that is through our imaginations. Through that place where we dream, where we hold our dreams, where we hold where we want to be and who we want to be and where we want to go. We just have to sit up and we have to pay attention, right? That's why I was asking, have some of you kind of started paying attention to those imaginations a little bit more lately? And one of the ways we do this is that we envision what we want to be or do in this lifetime. And we can do this by seeing the end result. So the biblical verse from Romans 4:17 says, "As it is written, I have made you the father of many nations, in the presence of the God in whom he or she believed, who gives life to the dead and calls into existence the things that do not exist." So in his book, Wishes Fulfilled, Dr. Wayne Dyer says, when I place something into my imagination, it is already a fact for me. He wasn't playing. He's like, it is already fact. I don't care what my five senses are telling me. It is fact. But he talks about how he created the cover of this book before it was even halfway done, because he knew it would be. He wasn't born standing on stages and talking to thousands of people and giving his teachings, inspiring audiences all over the world. He began by first seeing the end result. He envisioned himself doing those things. And we have to start by living from the end. And I'm not talking about living in the future. Those are two separate things. I'm not talking about we walk around not enjoying the present moment. It means that much like looking at a map or a GPS, we must have that endpoint in mind first, because if you don't have an endpoint of where you're going, you can't put it into your GPS, right? You have to have that endpoint in mind. Otherwise, we don't really know how to chart the course. But we must be willing to move beyond what just our five senses are telling us. This moves us more into the spiritual realm of things and into that place of faith or that place of trust, even though we might not be able to physically see it yet with our physical eyes. So Dr. Dyer also tells us the outer world is always changing, which by our previous definition means it is not real. Another deep thought this morning. But this awareness could lead to you experiencing a majestic wake-up call right here and right now. And it's this way with where we are today, with current events also, right? We know what we want to see at the end of all of this. I'm sure most of us in this room know what we want to see at the end of all of this stuff. But first, we have to chart the course. We have to chart the course to get to that end result. And we also must do the work that's required to get there, right? You don't just see the end point and then just be like, oh, I'll get there. I'm just going to sit on the couch and, snack on a few chips and watch some TV and get there. We have to be willing to do the work to get to that end result. Dr. Dyer envisioned his book being finished, but it wouldn't have happened if he actually had picked up pen and paper and written the darn thing. And we have to trust. We have to have faith that despite whatever it is our five senses are telling us or what we are perceiving with those five senses. Now, Dr. Dyer, in his book, he tells us the story of Anita, who was a friend of his. And she was lying on what she termed her deathbed, and her body was riddled with illness and sickness. And while she was lying here in this state, she entered into what others have often referred to as an NDE, which is a near-death experience, is what she called it. And she talks about how she actually crossed over. She transitioned over into the other dimension. And she says when she was there, she was completely immersed in love. And she also talked about how there was such clarity when she was in this NDE. Clarity for the illness her body had, and clarity as to why she and we are all here right now. She saw her part on a much grander scale than she said she did when she was in her body, when living from within her five senses. Dr. Dyer says Anita was shown that everything going on in our lives is dependent on this energy around us, created by us. Nothing is solid. We are the creators of our surroundings and life conditions, depending on how we use this energy. Now, Anita further reported, she said, I realized that if I went back, it would be with a very healthy energy. Then the physical body would catch up to the energetic conditions very quickly and permanently. I was given the understanding that this applies to anything, not only to illness. So Anita did return to her body, and she said that 4 days later, she was found to be completely cancer-free. So we've always got to remember that there is so much more going on around us than what we can physically see. Again, moving beyond those five senses. And this also applies to how we allow ourselves to feel too, right? Anyone in here ever experienced some feelings of hopelessness with some of our current events? Yeah. Josie asked if that was a joke, but no, I know that I have. I definitely have, more than I would care to admit. And I've let myself get down in the weeds with it too. Well, I've been down in the weeds with it. The racism that's still out there in the year 2020, that eats at me. I'm not going to lie and say it eats at me. The way our immigrants, our fellow spiritual beings have been treated. And how there are people out there that think it's okay simply because they were born in a different country. The stoking of violence by people who are supposed to be leaders. And I vent on social media sometimes. Anybody that's on my Facebook sees that. I vent on social media sometimes. And I talk to Mindy and I talk to my friends about it. Because it's good to get that mess off your chest, isn't it? I mean, it's good sometimes to just, But we also have to remember that the way we feel plays a pretty big part in bringing forth what we want to see in our lives, and in our country and in the world as a whole. Now, Dr. Dyer, he quotes Neville in relation to this, and he says, "Make your future dream a present fact by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled." So let's just say you want to lose weight. Let's just say something, you want to lose weight. You know that this would require eating healthier and probably doing some exercise, something that's not always fun. Venus, don't say anything. We've got a personal trainer here, so don't say anything. But yet in the back of your mind, you don't feel as if you're ever going to lose that weight you want to lose. You tell yourself, it's impossible for me to lose it. It's impossible for me to have this, this weight loss that I want to have. I can't do that exercise. I can't do this. I can't do that. You don't feel that you're ever going to have a healthier body. What do you think is going to happen when you feel that way? And you keep telling yourself this thing over and over. It's likely going to make it a lot more difficult than what it has to be. Remember, starting from the end. You have to visualize yourself as being that healthier person that you want to be. Then you have to feel yourself as that healthier person that you want to be. What are you going to be able to do when you reach that end result that you're visualizing in your mind? Maybe you're thought about running a marathon. Visualize yourself at the end of that. You're running across the finish line. Yay, the crowds are cheering. You feel as if you're on the top of the world when you do that. How does it make you feel? Because you already are that healthier person. The five senses, the material world just needs to catch up. Your consciousness is always ready. It's always ready. It's just waiting for you to catch up. It's waiting for you to get on board. And it's this way with current events too. Is it really so different? We've got this amazing opportunity that is in front of us right now. We are living in this amazing opportunity. And I know there's many of us waiting for it to be over with. I thought about that too. I'm going to do this, and this when we don't have COVID anymore, We're going to have a party at the church. We're going to have cupcakes, which we really will, But maybe going through all of this is a part of living from the end that we're envisioning. Our consciousness as a whole on this planet is shifting. We've got more people than ever before that are moving beyond a God outside of the Bible. Getting to know a version of God that is likely far different than one who's been manufactured by people for reasons that weren't always so honest. I'm not saying don't read the Bible, but I'm just saying we're moving from this God a little bit beyond the Bible. We've got this chance and we've got this opportunity to move God out of just this manufactured version. We've got this chance to be a part of ushering in this new spiritual evolution. And we look around us and we see, we think we see a year we'd like to forget. I do the same thing, but then I catch myself and I ask why. Why would I want to forget this? Because I said yes to being here. On a spiritual level, I said yes to being here. There had to be a reason of why I said yes. There had to be a reason as to why we all said yes. I had to have once seen the end of this result. This is why I chose to be here. This is why I choose to be here and to help shift this consciousness. This is the time in which we truly get to practice our unity principles. This is it. There is no other time better than this present moment, right here and right now. We feel it and we keep the end result in mind. Now, Dr. Dyer also mentions choosing to feel good. And notice that he said the word choosing. He didn't say hoping to feel good. He said choosing, and that places the ball back into our own court. Heck, it places the ball directly into our hands, into each one of our hands. Now, Dr. Dyer tells the story of Swami and how Swami would greet each person as they entered into his ashram. And he would ask them, do you know the difference between feeling good and feeling God? If the person shook their head, Swami would look at him and he would create a circle with his thumb and forefinger, indicating that there are zero. meaning that there is absolutely no difference between the two, that God and good are one. So remember Genesis 1:1 of the Torah. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then a few lines later in Genesis 1:31, then God saw everything that it had made, and indeed it was very good. So God and good are one, meaning that we choose, and there's that word again, choose. We are choosing to feel in alignment with our higher self. That oneness that is, as Dr. Dyer states, is called both good and God. And we can choose for things other than just ourselves as well. We can do this. We can choose what we want to see taking place all around us at any given time, even in the physical world. Now, I'm not saying we walk around in this constant state of what's called positive toxicity, in this airy fairyland where we ignore what's going on. I'm not suggesting that for a moment. But we can begin to cause a shift. One of us does this. One of us causes this shift. One of us decides, I'm going to live from the end and I'm going to chart that course, and it creates a ripple. So imagine if each and every one of us did this. Each and every one of us is starting to create a ripple. What's going to happen? Each one of those little ripples is eventually going to meet, and we're going to create quite the force. We're going to create a tsunami. Thinking that our world or that our country is lost, holding within these feelings of hopelessness, envisioning us living in a world that isn't something we want to see. That's not what we want to think about. Now, of course, we should be aware. Of course, we should march. And we should protest if that's what we feel we're called to do. We should write letters. We should make phone calls. We should continue to take the precautions that we need to take against COVID. But we should also continue to hold the high watch on a spiritual level. We should continue to live from that end result that we envision. That end where there's this new state of consciousness. This new state where we've programmed it into our GPS and that we're following along the way. Doing what we need to do along this journey, getting towards that end destination. Now, old ways don't always disappear easily, do they? They don't just seem to poof and go away overnight. There will always be those who want to hold on to the way things used to be, or the ways they think things should be. You're going to come across people who wish to use the Bible or to use God as a weapon to make others feel less than, to justify horrific acts, such as slavery, the mistreatment of immigrants, the mistreatment of our African American people, LGBT women and the like. But you know differently. Even people that feel that way, that feel it's okay, deep down they still know differently. Because that is not of God. You know that this isn't of your higher self, and it's not of the higher selves for those who choose to not let it go. We sometimes forget that we're all in this oneness together. But it's such a wonderful feeling when we remember it, isn't it? When we stop and we remember that oneness. So remember, you saw the end already. On a spiritual level, you already saw the end, and you chose to be here to help usher us to that end that you saw, to that glorious light that's at the end of this journey. And of course, the journey never really does end, but it does change, right? It always brings about a shift in consciousness and about the way we see things and about the way we live and experience life and experience each other. Some people have viewed COVID and political happenings as a dark cloud. But what if they aren't? What if these things are happening right here, right now, to usher in this new consciousness? And you, us, we get to be a part of that. You see, the consciousness is always ready. We just have to be willing to catch up to it. Namaste.